Hello there folks, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And welcome to part 2 to my wristwatch question and answer video. Now, a number of weeks ago I fired out a message on the YouTube Chap's Guide community page in which I asked you folks if you would send your questions in to me about wristwatches, and I would do my best to answer those questions with my observations. Of course, I'm not an expert, I'm just a watch aficionado with my own opinions, and these are the opinions that I will share with you today. So, not an expert, but happy to share my own thoughts. This is part 2, by the way. I did another part 1 video because we had so many questions a few weeks ago. I filmed it just a few minutes ago, but it was released a little while back. So look back in my video library, find that one if you like this particular style of video. So here we go. Let us answer some of the questions that we have had. So first one comes from Very Keen to Please, and he or she says, have you ever considered making the upgrade from Rolex to one of the Holy Trinity? Now, of course, what you refer to there is the 3 brands of watch which are considered to be the absolute pinnacle of the hierarchy of the pyramid of wristwatches. And that is, of course, Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin and Audemars Piguet. And the answer is, oh, would I love to? Yes, of course I would love to take that step up into the Holy Trinity. The reality is, though, Rolex is, of course, right, one of the reasons I think why Rolex is so popular is that it is achievable by the common man. And here is the prime example, right? I'm sitting here today, wristwatch check. If you didn't see the first video, which I did, today I'm wearing a Rolex GMT Master 2 in the Pepsi variety, so the blue and red. Now this is considered to be a highly desirable watch. I recently purchased it. I'll be honest with you, you can find this out if you look it up in the Rolex catalogue. This watch costs £7,750. It's a lot of money, all right? I saved up. That's a really considered purchase for me. I've got an ordinary job. I'm a normal guy, but my vice is Swiss wristwatches, all right? So I don't smoke. I barely drink. I don't spend money in many places, but I save up and I buy delightful watches when I get the opportunity. And that's achievable. That is an amount of money which anybody can set their goal at. Now, whether it takes you 12 months or 5 years, you can save £7,000. It's a holiday to some people. It's a car to somebody else. It's an achievable amount of money to save. When you're talking about Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin or AP, these are brands where you're looking at 30, 40, £50,000 for the desirable pieces. Your Nautiluses and your Aquanauts and your Royal Oaks and things like that. These are the ones which everybody wants. Of course, you can buy cheaper versions, but in reality, would you want to? If you're going to step up into that hallowed atmosphere of watches of that level, you want the ones which everybody wants. We would all love to have a Nautilus. But the price point is just prohibitive for ordinary folks. So yes, I would love to. If I could, what would I have from those ranges? Vacheron Constantin, I have to say, doesn't really offer anything which I'm attracted to. Audemars Piguet, I do like the Royal Oak. It is a very attractive watch. I love the integrated bracelet. It is so classy and elegant. Yeah, there are many different models in that range I would like. I also like the fact they come in different sizes because I don't like huge watches. They have an option for me. So yes, definitely Royal Oak would be the thing of my dreams. And with Patek Philippe, there are many watches in their range I quite like. For me, Patek Philippe kind of is the ultimate in the wristwatch world. That is where the buck stops. I wouldn't want to look any further than that. I really do like the Nautilus, but of course everybody does. There's no chance of ever owning one of those. Quite like the Aquanaut. Aquanaut's lovely as well. And there's a few other pieces in the range that could easily tempt me. Calatrava, if you like the smarter formal watch. But yeah, I would love to. Truth is, unless I get a lottery win, it ain't gonna happen. So worth worth throwing that out there. Next question comes from Web Bezzy. Here we go. Couple of few questions here. Number one, where to purchase vintage luxury watches with peace of mind? Good question. There's several different questions in this one question here. Where would I go? I'm not a big fan of vintage watches. I do like buying new because I like to think that the watch is beginning its journey with me. So, my journey begins then. I like there is something to buying a vintage watch if you like the retro look, which in some degree I do. So if I was going to buy a vintage watch, I would be looking at avenues where I could buy them with absolute confidence. And it would be things like eBay. It would be places like Chrono24, because they have authentication services where that the watch you buy is going to be genuine. It's going to be inspected by a watch professional who's going to authenticate it before purchase. It might cost you a little bit more than buying it from some dealer somewhere, but truth is, when it comes to vintage, I think, of course, authenticity is everything, and I would look for an avenue to purchase my watch where authenticity could be verified. Your second question is how to obtain highly sought after luxury watches like the Daytona, the AP Royal Oak at retail price. Sir, there is, the golden question, is there not? The Rolex Daytona, the Royal Oak, the Nautilus, watches of that nature, quite simply, they are not available to ordinary people such as you and I, all right? These watches are only available to people who are high roller, preferential customers in authorized dealers who've got a solid purchasing history, who may buy other items from their authorized dealers as well, who are good customers because, let's be honest, jewelry stores, they are businesses and they will favor their best customers with their better products. So to be able to buy a Daytona from Rolex or a Royal Oak from Audemars Piguet at the retail price, you're going to need to fall into that category. You're going to have to spend a pile of money and be a trusted customer before that's going to happen. I'm sorry to burst the bubble. Truth is, unless you're very, very, very lucky, it's not going to happen. It's better to be truthful. What do you think of the Rolex Daytona, the AP Royal Oak, the Rolex Pepsi, or the Rolex Explorer 1? Okay, good questions. What do I think? The Royal Oak, love it. I'd own one tomorrow if I had the chance. Rolex Daytona, less so. All right, I am not a huge fan of the Daytona for a number of reasons. I don't particularly love the dial. I think it's very fussy. There's a lot going on the dial. When I look at the dial on a Daytona, I find it difficult to tell the time swiftly. And I don't like the complication which is available on the Daytona. I think it's obsolete. If I was going to go out to time something to that level of accuracy in this modern era, I would probably use my iPhone. I would probably use my digital watch. So the truth is, I don't really love what the Daytona brings to the table. The Rolex Pepsi, I'm wearing one, kind of tells you what I think about that. I love the playful nature of the dial, the bezel, the blue and the red. It's just quite cheerful. It's quite a lovely casual watch. And the Rolex Explorer 1, I'm on the waiting list for one. I would love to have one. I think they could be the perfect one watch wristwatch collection. It's a watch which is a professional range watch, so it's water resistant to 100 meters. You can take it anywhere. You can wear it with a suit because it's classically elegant. It's 36 millimeters in size, so it is timelessly sartorial in its appearance. For me, if there is one watch in the world that I could buy and I could only have one watch, it would be the Rolex Explorer. And the good news is, I think they're a bit more accessible than the other ones you've mentioned. Thanks for your question. So, another question from Modern Dandy. And he says, I wear a pocket watch every day. I have ditched the wristwatch entirely. What's your opinion on this traditional and old-fashioned accessory? Okay, the pocket watch, it's kind of slipped into abeyance, hasn't it, in reality? I cannot remember the last time I saw a gentleman walking around wearing a pocket watch in their waistcoat, or perhaps in their breast pocket of their jacket. with the chain extending to their pocket square, to their, their buttonhole. It's just not something you typically see. So I have to say it's not something which really attracts me personally. Now, if it is a true reflection of your personality, I think it's the perfect thing for you to wear. Wristwatches are entirely subjective, all right? Some people will say that, the big chunky Rolex watches are crass, they're ugly, they have no class to them whatsoever. They're not very elegant, they are blunt instruments. I can see that argument. Somebody else might say, the Patek Philippe, the Calatrava, it's a beautiful slim wristwatch, but it's too fragile. It's not a watch that you can wear every day in rugged environments. You'd be afraid of damaging it. I can see that argument. The pocket watch, one could say, yes, it's something from a bygone era. It is perhaps a little bit, and it's in your name, I guess, it's a little bit dandyish. It's a little bit a little bit old-fashioned, but if it works for you, hey, go for it. I can think of occasions where a pocket watch would be appropriate. I bought a pocket watch as a gift for a close personal friend a number of years ago because I know he was quite a sartorially elegant chap. I've no idea if he wears it. I haven't seen him for a while. He now lives abroad. But yeah, I get it entirely. Wear your pocket watch with style and panache, sir. I'm sure it will suit you well. Smudger asks the question, do you collect Rolex watches for investment? The answer is no. I do not believe that watches should be seen as an investment because there are too many intangibles involved with their ability to go up or down in value. The fact is, I'm wearing a Pepsi, right? Highly desirable Rolex watch. I paid retail price for this watch not long ago. It is worth, on the grey market, twice what I paid for it because they're in short supply and people really like them. I didn't buy it as an investment, I bought it to wear it. Because if Rolex brings out an upgrade to this watch or a different version of this watch next year, that could cause this watch to absolutely plummet in value. And as an investment, it could be devastating if I bought it with investment in mind. So my view, buy a watch because you love it. If it happens to increase in value, be aware of it because you have to, because if something happens like, it becomes super desirable, you've got to be careful where you wear it. You don't want to be mugged or robbed, but don't buy it purely because it's an investment. Too many things could go wrong and you could lose money on that watch. So buy it because you love it. If it goes up in price, all well and good. When it comes to watches like Rolex, Patek Philippe, and certain watches from other brands, of course, they hold their money rather well. So it is reassuring to buy a watch in the knowledge that it's not going to lose money, and that's enough for me. All right, it's nice to know that if it hit the fan and I needed to come up with some money quickly, I could liquidate my watch and I could get myself out of the poo-poo. That's all I need to know. I'm happy with that. Okay. Question from Michael M. Do you see the Rolex market cooling off in the reasonable future and pieces becoming more available in authorized dealers? Well, the answer is not really. We are aware, and I've had this confirmed recently. I've been bought a new watch, and I've had a chat with authorized dealers all over the country just recently on my tour of the country professionally and casually. And I've been gathering lots of intelligence about Rolex watches. And the reality is, a lot of people say there's the supply of watches is low, hence there's this huge rise in price and difficulty in buying Rolex watches. I think absolutely I will say there is no reduction in supply. The problem is a vast increase in demand. That's probably been caused by lots of people during the pandemic who've got more money than they've had for a long time, all right? They haven't gone on holidays, the middle classes. They haven't gone on holiday to the Maldives. So instead of going on holiday, they've got some extra cash washing around. And what do you buy if you're middle class? You go and buy a piece of jewellery or a Rolex watch or something of that nature. And that's what they've done. They've emptied the authorised dealers of all the Rolex watches. And that is why when you walk past a Rolex AD, there's nothing in the window. So I don't see the market cooling off while that exists, all right? Particularly for the Rolex professional range. The Explorers, the Submariners, the GMTs, the Daytonas, all of those watches which people love and really want to get their hands on, that's not going to drop off a cliff anytime soon. Because even if Rolex increase their manufacturing, they're only going to increase the manufacturing process proportionately across the range. Remember, Rolex are not a normal business. They are a charity. So they're not driven to please the needs of shareholders. So they're not necessarily going to make more watches just because more watches are needed by the community, right? It's supply and demand. They've got a really odd way of, manufacturing and supplying items because they've got a different business model to practically any other company that you'll have heard of. So yeah. Now I do know, however, that Rolex are in the process of building a new manufacturing facility on the outskirts of Geneva in Switzerland, and undoubtedly in 18 to 24 months they will be able to produce more watches than they are today. That will increase the supply. Whether that will make a significant impact in the demand, who knows? But there is a slight light at the end of the tunnel. So that's all I can tell you. I don't think the market will cool off. If anything, I think it'll, accelerate again because the lack of watches available drives the desire for people to own them. It's human nature. If you can't get it, you want it more. That's kind of where we are with Rolex. Now I've got another question, and it comes from Alan Bell, and Alan says, you seem to be a fan of homage fragrances. Does this extend to homage watches? And you are right, Alan. I dearly love Creed Green Irish Tweed, but I will be damned to hell if I'm going to pay £250 for a fragrance. I would rather pay 20 quid for a homage fragrance which smells very much like it, something like Davidoff Cool Water for instance, rather than pay all that much more just for the perfection of Creed Green Irish Tweed. But it doesn't really extend to watches for me. For me, a homage watch is a watch which looks strikingly similar to, say for instance, a Submariner. Let's talk about Rolex Submariners. They are the most copied watch in the world, and if you go onto AliExpress you will find a multitude of Chinese companies which manufacture watches which look strikingly similar to the Submariner in every way, but they are not. And if you were to buy one of those watches in the belief that other people will look upon you and think that you're wearing a Submariner, that, I think, is where I draw the line. It ceases to become a homage, then it becomes a deception. Because who are you deceiving? I wear Rolex watches, and I wear them because I love and I revel in the pleasure of wearing something which is magnificently well made, which is robust and tough, and something I can wear every day and get pleasure from wearing. It is absolutely not to show off to other people. More often than not, you won't even know that I'm wearing a watch, right? Let alone an expensive watch. And that's the way I like it. Discretion is very much about being a gentleman. And if I was to wear a homage in the belief that if somebody sees it, they think I'm wearing something fancy and more expensive, who am I kidding? I'm kidding them, but I'm kidding myself as well. I'm trying to be something that I am not. So for me, I wouldn't do that. I would rather not wear a homage. Now it's something totally different if you just want to buy a watch and you don't care if it looks like a Submariner or a Patek Philippe Nautilus. If you buy a watch simply because it's a lovely watch and you just want to wear it and it doesn't matter to you whether it looks like a Submariner, power to you, mate. You go out there and you buy it and you wear it if you're not concerned about it. But if you're buying it with the intention of deceiving somebody else into believing that it is something that it is not, well, it's not really a homage then, is it? It is a lie. And that's not a route that I go down. We've got time for one more question from Lars Ronbad, and he says, I would be interested in your opinions about the excellent watches that are affordable German brands like Nomos and Sinn. Okay, really good question actually. I've recently become quite interested in these pieces myself, done a bit of reading about them, and I've never owned either of the brands, but of the two, let's talk about Sin for a start. Now Sin, it's a relatively young company, been around since 1961, and of course their sort of most common watch is the 556. It's quite classic, quite elegant, looks like a bit of a field watch, aviation inspired of course. Lovely piece, you know, really robust. I know people who have owned them and have said they are strikingly well made, and they offer a very reasonable price. They are still about £2,000 plus, and they do have ETA movements, so they are not, you know, an all-round sort of perhaps luxury package. They're running very workmanlike, very utilitarian watch movement, the ETA, nothing wrong with that at all. You know, great watch movement, been banging on for years and years. It's going to be very reliable. For me, Sin lacks a bit of panache. It's so simplistic and utilitarian. It could be any other brand. So for me, it just doesn't give enough for what is a lot of money. £2,000 buys you a lot of watch. You could be looking at, you know, for not much more, you could be looking down the Tudor category, couldn't you really, for that sort of money? And that's where my money would go. I do love the idea of German watches though. The other brand you mentioned, Nomos, even younger, you know, been around since 1990. They come from the Glashuter area of Lower Saxony in Germany, and having lived in Germany myself for 3 years, I really appreciate the German ethos and ideology around engineering. Simplistic, robust, solid. You know, when I look to buy household appliances, you know, I tend to think if it's German, it's going to be excellent. If it's a car, right? I run a German car. I've got a Volkswagen, right? I know, right? The Volkswagens I've owned BMWs, I've owned Volkswagens over the years. They are like tanks. They keep going on and on. They're so well made, and the same expresses itself in the wristwatch industry in Germany. I think, you know, they are the equal of Switzerland in many, many ways, and in the future, Germany is absolutely going to be right up there with Germany. Nomos particularly, I love Nomos. I really do appreciate the simplistic, clean, modernist style. It's aesthetically very reminiscent of the Bauhaus movement, which is simple, clean lines, no superfluous sort of elements to it. They have in-house calibers as well, which is also very attractive if you're interested in the watchmaking side of things. You know, the fact that they are producing their own movements in such beautiful cases of watches, they're very attractive. I think at £3,000 plus, as most of them are, particularly their Tangenta range, 38mm, it's a beautiful size as well. It would fit me perfectly. It would be a delightful dress watch. If I had the money, I wouldn't hesitate. You know, I would love to have a Nomos in my collection. The Tangenta, the 38mm piece, it's glorious. So yeah, I can't sing its praises enough. The Sin, a little bit less so. You know, I don't think bang for buck, it's right up there because of the ETA movement, because it's a little bit ordinary to look at. But the Nomos, all day long, I'd have one in the collection. And I'm going to squeeze one last one in from The Gent. And he asks, which watch brand in your eyes offers the best value for money? Well, there are two out there which really sing out to me. And that is Oris and Tudor, all right? I think Oris, modestly priced, really lovely range of watches available in a host of different colorways. They've got some really heritage looking retro pieces. They've got some modernistic pieces. You know, the Aquas is a big diver's watch. The Diver 65 is a nice retro looking watch, and there's loads of other pieces in the range. The Big Pointer, I think, is a lovely piece as well. So many watches in the range and very modestly priced. And Tudor, Rolex level quality, but half the price. If you can you know, if you can find a watch in the range which suits you, and I think Tudor are introducing more watches that tick the boxes for more men, the more they expand upon their Black Bay 58 range and even their standard Black Bay range. I've got a Black Bay GMT. I think it's a delightful watch. It's rock solid. It can, you know, it's like built like a tank, and it just is such good value for money. And, you know, what more can I say? I think they are the two brands I'd be looking at if I was going for value for money. So there we go. That is the end of part 2 of my watch Q&A videos. I've enjoyed answering your questions. I hope they've been of some use. If they have, you can do me the honor of giving us a thumbs up. And if you're not already a subscriber, click that red button and come on the Chap's Guide journey with us into the future. Until the next time, take care of yourselves, wear your watches with style and in good health, and I will look forward to seeing you again very soon.